They didn't say it behind my back. They said it right to my face. I was still in my gas station uniform wiping down the counter for the third time that hour. A couple had spilled half a slushie and walked off without so much as a nod. The buzz of the freezer hummed in the background. I was just about to check the coffee machine when my phone lit up beside the register. Sabine Quinn just posted a new photo. My thumb hovered, then tapped. I wish I hadn't. There she was, my little sister grinning with her arms stretched wide in front of a silver Mercedes with a bow on top. The caption read, "Graduated in style. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Blessed beige Mercedes baby." The location tag, Four Seasons Hotel Charlotte. There were balloons, champagne, designer heels, hundreds of comments, queen emojis, fire emojis, slay girl, obsessed. I just stood there, sticky cloth in one hand, the other, holding my phone like a punch I didn't see coming. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't invited. I put the phone face down and kept wiping. There was no one to complain to. I didn't even bother asking why. I already knew the answer. When my shift ended, I rode the bus home and sat on the edge of my twin mattress. I stared at the wall, too tired to cry, too used to it. Sabine was the star. Always had been. Honor roll, pageants, influencer brand deals. She looked like a magazine cover and the world loved her for it. And me? I was what happened when things didn't go according to plan. No degree, no sparkle. Just hours on a time card and a 15-year-old car with one door that didn't open from the inside. A week later, I showed up at my parents' house with a birthday card and a bundle of gas station flowers I bought on clearance. My shoes were still dusty from my shift, but I wanted to see my mom's face light up. They were having brunch. Not just a casual one, this was a catered linen napkin kind of affair for Sabine and her college friends. Everyone was dressed like they stepped off Pinterest. My mom took the flowers without looking up. "You should have called," she said. "We already have guests." I offered to help in the kitchen, hoping just a small hope that she'd let me belong for 10 minutes. She hesitated, then looked toward the dining room. "Maybe just take the trash out, Mava. The girls are eating. I don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable." I didn't say anything, just took the bag and walked out back. On my way back in, I heard laughter from the dining room. I froze near the hallway. Dorian's voice carried through. "She's going places, you know, not like some people wasting their lives behind a counter." There it was. I stood there a second longer, then walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and didn't move, not for 5 minutes, not for 20. I wasn't sad anymore. I was something else. By the time I got home, I knew exactly what I needed to do. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I just sat on my mattress with my back against the wall and a pen in my hand. I pulled out an old notebook I used to keep grocery lists in and flipped to a blank page. The lines were faded, but it didn't matter. At the top, I wrote, "I am done trying to be seen." Underneath, I wrote all the things I wasn't going to chase anymore: apologies, approval, a seat at any table that made me feel like a burden. I didn't need them to clap. I needed to build a life that didn't disappear the moment they looked away. The knock at the door came right after midnight. It wasn't loud, just a soft, familiar rhythm. Pop. He let himself in before I could stand up. "Didn't mean to drop by so late," he said, holding up a bag of groceries. "You eat today?" I lied. "Yeah." He glanced around the room like he already knew I hadn't. Then he set the bag down and sat beside me on the floor, back against the same wall. We didn't say much for a while. He opened a can of peaches and handed me half. I took them, chewing slowly, more out of respect than hunger. "You're holding something in," he finally said. I didn't answer. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, beat-up brass keychain. The letters on it were almost worn away, but you could still make out the words, "Built Not Bought." "Carried this with me since '74, he said. "First house I ever built. Didn't know what I was doing, just had a shovel, a toolbox, and a will too damn stubborn to quit. Everyone thought I'd mess it up. Maybe I did. But I finished it anyway." He held it out to me. "Figure it's time someone else carried it." I stared at it for a long time before taking it. It was heavier than it looked. "I don't have a plan yet," I whispered. "You don't need one yet," he said. Just keep stacking bricks, mental, emotional, financial, whatever kind you've got. A foundation shows up if you do. He left shortly after. Didn't hug me, didn't linger. Just said lock the door behind me, all right, and disappeared into the night. I sat there for a while, just me and the keychain. Then I reached for a crumpled gas station receipt on the floor and flipped it over. I wrote 4 words in all caps, build something they can't ignore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was beginning something. Not flashy, not loud, but mine. I didn't know where to begin, so I started with Google. How to build something from nothing. That was the first thing I typed. It led me down a rabbit hole of midnight research articles on side hustles videos about wholesaling houses forums full of strangers flipping homes without loans. Most of it sounded like a scam, but I kept digging. Somewhere between exhaustion and quiet rage, I found a podcast called Brick by Brick Real Estate for Beginners. I downloaded every episode and started listening to it during my bus rides to work. I made a list of what I needed: time, money, patience, and grit. I was already used to being broke. Grit I had, patience I could learn. Time, I'd just have to steal it from myself. I canceled every subscription. No more takeout, no more $2 energy drinks. I sold my TV for $75 cash on Marketplace. It hurt more than I expected, like cutting a cord to my last form of escape. I opened a new bank account and labeled it Freedom. I started putting away whatever I could, tips from late shifts, spare change from rounding down at the grocery store. Sometimes it was only $1, but the balance grew 1 gritty cent at a time. Then I found a real estate course online for $40. The site looked like it hadn't been updated since 2010, but the content was real videos, PDFs, downloadable contracts. I printed everything at the library and brought the packet to work. When customers weren't around, I kept the notes open under the counter. I studied during lunch breaks and before bed. I started to see patterns in the deals people talked about: distressed properties, motivated sellers wholesaling without cash or credit. I wasn't trying to be a mogul. I just wanted one chance. That chance came on a rainy Tuesday night. I was on register when a regular walked in. Dennis Scruffy Boots faded jeans. He bought a black coffee and a lottery ticket. We talked about the weather like always. Then he sighed and said, "You wouldn't happen to know anyone who wants a moldy old house, would you? I just inherited one from my uncle, things barely standing." I paused. "Where is it? Edge of Ridgeview. Cracked foundation. Smells like swamp. You selling it?" He raised an eyebrow. "You buying?" I shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I know someone who would." That night I drove to see it. I wore my cleanest hoodie and took photos with a borrowed phone. The house leaned like it was tired, but I saw past the water damage and sagging walls. I saw potential. I saw proof that I could do something bigger than gas station floors and sympathy glances. I posted in a Facebook investor group that night. One woman responded. Her name was Janelle. She asked for numbers. I gave her everything I had: photos, repair estimates, comps. She said she'd take it if I could lock it for under $70K. I got Dennis to sign a contract for $65,000. I assigned it to her 3 days later. My cut $5,000. No hammer, no loans, just knowledge and a yes. I used part of the $5,000 to register my LLC. Marvin Properties, a name stitched from mine and Pop's Mava and Calvin. I printed business cards at the library, bought stamps in batches of 10, and spent nights handwriting letters to every absentee homeowner I could find in the county registry. I cold-called strangers on my 10-minute breaks behind the gas station, the scent of burnt coffee and spilled diesel in the air. Most hung up, some swore, a few listened, and 2 of those turned into deals. Small ones, but they mattered. I made $3 $200 on one, $6 $100 on the other. I didn't buy anything for myself. I didn't celebrate. I just moved the money into my Freedom account and started the process again. I kept my day job. I couldn't afford not to. My body was tired, but my mind was burning. I didn't need applause. I needed progress. Then one day, while scrolling on my cracked screen during lunch, I saw Sabine's newest post. She stood in front of a white mansion, not mine, not yet, with a caption that read, "Some people just won't catch up." Different levels. It wasn't subtle. It didn't have to be. The comments flooded in. Iconic, built different, leave the slow ones behind. I locked my phone. My hands shook. I wasn't angry, I was just so tired of disappearing. Later that week, I helped with my first renovation. A local investor offered to let me assist on a flip. I said yes without hesitating. I scraped floors, hauled demo trash, painted until my arms ached. And every time I opened a window in that dusty house, I could almost see the future. One night, long after everyone else had gone home, I sat alone on the unfinished stairwell. Drywall dust clung to my jeans. I was supposed to be proud. I was building something. But instead, I cried. Not loud, not messy, just quiet tears that didn't ask for comfort. The kind that came from being proud and invisible at the same time. I heard the door creak open. Pop stepped in holding a thermos. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. He sat beside me on the stairs, handed me the cup, and rested his hand over mine. "You hear that?" he asked. I looked around. "What?" "That sound," he said, tapping his chest like something cracking open. I nodded barely. "That's not you breaking, baby girl," he said gently. "That's the wall. You're breaking through." I didn't answer. I just leaned into his shoulder and for the first time in a long time, let someone hold the weight with me. The next morning, I ordered new flyers. Not flashy, just bold enough. It took 27 months, 4 contracts, 2 flips, and more rejections than I could count. But I did it. I bought a house. Not just any house, a 6-bedroom estate on the edge of Asheville. White pillars, wraparound porch, tall windows that let in morning light like it was trying to bless you. It needed work, but I wanted the work. I wanted every nail and screw to carry my name. I walked through it alone the day the sale closed barefoot on the newly polished wood. The house was empty, but I didn't feel alone. I felt present, like I'd stepped into a future I hadn't dared name until it stood solid beneath my feet. I designed everything from the crown molding to the curved stairwell. I chose a soft green for the kitchen walls because it reminded me of Pop's thermos. I picked black iron railings for the balcony, strong, understated, honest. I built a small library into the study with reclaimed oak, even though I only owned 6 books. I figured I'd grow into it. I didn't throw a party. I didn't announce it. I didn't post a single photo. I kept it quiet not out of shame, but because this win didn't belong to the internet. It belonged to the girl who used to sleep beside her tool bag because she couldn't afford to lose one more thing. The listing hadn't been updated yet. The house had only come off the market 3 days earlier, and the photos were still circulating on rental sites. I didn't think much of it until I heard tires crunching over gravel outside my gate. I looked up from the dining table I was polishing. A black Range Rover was easing up the drive. It was Sabine's. I stood still. A moment later, the doors opened, and out stepped my mother, my father Sabine, and a woman I didn't recognize, probably a friend or a photographer. Sabine was dressed in head-to-toe cream. She walked like she'd done it 1,000 times, chin-high, phone out, recording everything. My parents followed close behind, as if they were inspecting a model home, unaware they'd just walked into something they had no idea how to value. I stepped onto the porch, holding the keys, heart steady. They hadn't come to see me. They didn't even know I lived here. They thought this was another luxury backdrop for Sabine's curated life. But this wasn't a rental. And I wasn't the help. I waited until Sabine tilted her head for a better selfie angle until she looked toward the door and froze. I didn't say anything, not yet. I just let the keys hang loose in my hand, the sun catching the brass the same way her caption used to catch hearts. Sabine saw me first. Her phone dipped a little, confused, like her screen wasn't syncing with reality. Then she squinted and took a few steps closer. My mother followed, adjusting her sunglasses. My father lingered by the car, arms crossed, already judging the landscaping. Sabine tilted her head. "Maeva." "What are you doing here?" I didn't move. I just lifted the keyring and let it dangle in the sun. "This is my house." Sabine laughed, a short burst that didn't quite land. "Wait, are you staging it or something? Like working the open house?" "No," I said calmly. "I don't live here either." Now she looked truly lost. "Then, what I own it." Silence. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father took a step forward. "What are you saying? You bought this." "With my company," I replied. "Marvin Properties. I handled the acquisition, managed the renovations, paid in full. No loans, no help. The gravel shifted behind them. Another car pulled in Pop's pickup, old and dusty and familiar as a heartbeat. He parked slowly, then stepped out, taking in the house like he already knew every inch of it. He didn't look at Sabine. Or my parents. He walked straight toward me. When he reached the porch, he paused, eyes soft, proud. "You built it tall enough," he said, voice low, reverent. I swallowed the lump in my throat as he pulled me into a hug. For a moment, I forgot the others even existed. There was just his hand on my back, and the keychain in my palm, his keychain. Built, not bought. When he stepped inside, I turned back to the driveway. "You're welcome to come in," I said, "if you want." None of them moved. My mother scanned the porch railing. My father looked at the wide steps like they didn't quite belong to me. Sabine lowered her phone and finally stopped filming. No one said a word, so I turned and walked into the house. I didn't wait for footsteps behind me. I didn't check the window to see if they followed. I just walked through the foyer I'd restored with my own hands and let the silence speak for me. The next morning, my phone buzzed while I was pouring coffee in the kitchen. It was from my mother. "We're proud of you." 4 words. No punctuation, no apology, no explanation. I stared at the screen for a long time. It didn't feel like a triumph. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like a receipt confirmation of something long overdue, but offered too late to matter. I thought about all the nights I went to bed, wondering what was wrong with me. The birthdays I spent alone. The way they used my silence as evidence that I didn't care, when really I just didn't know how to keep bleeding for people who called it weakness. I thought about the way my mother had looked at the railing I built as if trying to find cracks in it. About the way my father couldn't say a word once the facts were too big to ignore. About how Sabine had stood frozen for once without a caption. And then I deleted the message, not out of bitterness, just clarity. I no longer needed proof that I was enough. They saw me now, maybe. But I'd been real this whole time. Just because someone finally opens their eyes doesn't mean you were invisible before. Pop and I had breakfast on the back porch. He told me about the crooked chimney he'd built on his first house, how it leaned but never fell. We laughed about it over scrambled eggs. That meant more to me than any message ever could. Later that day, I drove out to a property 2 towns over to meet a seller. The roof was half caved in. I saw the same thing I always did, possibility under the wreckage. I walked through the weeds and imagined what it could be. Not because I needed to prove anything anymore, because I had finally remembered who I was building for. Maria and Elijah used to share night shifts with me at the station. They saw me before the polished floors and porch columns back when I was still wiping counters and counting coins for rent. When they asked how I did it, I didn't give them speeches. I gave them tools. I printed out my original scripts, gave them copies of the old course. PDFs walked them through how to talk to sellers and handle silence on the other end of the phone. They showed up early, stayed late, asked hard questions. When they closed their first deal, $4, $200 on a wholesale in Ridgeview, we met for coffee at the spot near the old station. I brought them each a keychain. Same brass, same words, built, not bought. They understood. A week later, I saw a photo Sabine had posted. She was standing in front of my house smiling into the camera. The caption, "Dream Home Vibes," or manifested. She didn't tag me, didn't mention me, just used it as a backdrop like everything else. I looked at the screen, then set the phone down. I wasn't angry, not even surprised. I walked to my bookshelf where Pop's original keychain still sat scratched, dulled, solid. I placed it on the top shelf next to the first ledger I ever used to track expenses. The brass caught a sliver of afternoon sun and glowed. She could have the photos. I had the foundation. Most mornings I water the garden before the sun gets too high. It's not much, just herbs, tomatoes, a stubborn fig tree that refuses to give up, but it grows. Like I did. Pop still visits every Sunday. We drink coffee on the back porch, talk about roof angles and soil drainage like we're running a tiny empire. He always brings something, an old blueprint, a story I haven't heard, a reminder that building runs in the blood. There's no applause, no spotlight, just steady mornings and floors that don't creak when I walk on them. I used to chase their attention like oxygen. Now I breathe just fine without it. The ledger's full, the keychains polished, the front door closes soft and sure. Sometimes I think about that girl behind the counter counting pennies, pretending not to notice when people didn't look her in the eye. I hope she'd be proud of who we became. They still don't talk about me much. That's all right. I didn't do this to be remembered by them. I did it to remember myself. They thought I'd always be behind the counter, but I became the architect of my own front door.